Welcome to Free Range Flock. We were once the latchkey kids who came home to an empty house after school. We were feral, resilient, cynical, and innovative. Older than Google. Our teenage faces were never posted on social media. The internet was just an idea in our youth. Now we are older, wiser, and thriving. Our independent ways will continue to serve us. We plan to keep defying the odds, and we will carve our own path with grace, with humor, with joy, our way. We've been through some stuff. We will continue to keep pushing, and we are not going anywhere. The former latchkey kids are now the free range flock.
So, Sarah, how do you handle change, like big life changes?
Oh, Lord.
She's praying.
I am. I think I'm like most people, change is a challenge. Mm-hmm. You know, we know change is needed, and I like a certain amount of change in my life. I don't like to be bored. I like to do a lot of different things. But unexpected change especially, it stresses me out. You know, my blood pressure goes up. I get anxiety. But, you know, for me, it's, you know, how do I manage it? I try to stay busy. I try to stay active, you know, and then I face it head on as much as I can. Yeah.
I think for me, it depends on, like, you know, did I initiate the change? Because I like to create some change, as you know. Mm-hmm. I like to change things up. I can get bored. Did it come out of the blue? I mean, we've both been through some changes the last couple of years, just coming out of the pandemic and just kind of figure out who you are, and the whole going from work from home back to the office. I mean, that kind of change, it can be hard. But as free rangers, we've been around a bit. We've had our fair share of changes. We've seen like recessions and marriages and divorce. We're buying property. We're losing things. I'm always losing my phone. One of the things what's great about getting older is that we have weathered so many storms, and that we know that bad days eventually turn themselves around. Mm-hmm. I see young people at work who are always just so worried. And I remember my 20s and 30s were just so worried about, like, what do I need to be doing? What ring of the ladder should I be climbing next? Mm-hmm. What do I need to do to position myself so I can have this position? I mean, you're just constantly worried about lacking and imposter syndrome and all that. But now it's changed. I don't worry like that anymore. My worries are a little different, but I know that bad times end. Like when I see bad times happen at work, I know, like, okay, this is a cycle, and we will come out the other side. Everything will be okay. Yeah. But some people do endure. Some people endure change better than others. So instead of struggling through hard times, they seem to be thriving and have this inner joy that's still intact. How is that even possible?
I don't know, but some people do. I mean, it's, and again, maybe it's that excitement, that newness, that dopamine rush that we have when we have change.
Definitely. So my friend Molly McGinn is a local musician here in Greensboro, North Carolina. We actually met in Pilates class. So I'm not a musician, so I did not meet her being a fellow musician. Sarah's a musician, but not myself. But we actually met in Pilates class, and before class, we would always kind of talk about our lives and what's going on. And she's overcome just so much. It just still radiates with this joy. I want to, like, what's her secret? I just want to, like, you know, whatever it is, I want to go out and buy it, like in a case of it. I just want to go buy it. So our flock really needs more of that now, more than ever. We're living in very difficult times, and you turn on the news and it's overwhelming, but we shouldn't let these events just steal our joy. We need to find and keep that joy. So Free Rangers, I give you Molly McGinn. So Molly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Amy. I'm really happy to be here in my own home, but
yay!
At the same time.
Can we start off with you telling us about yourself?
Sure. I refer to myself a lot as a clumsy ballerina. Which are just two of my favorite words, but I am a writer and a musician, and just constantly trying to learn, make new connections, learn new things, learn about new stuff. I'm learning how to grow lavender, and I'm also a dog owner. I'm a dog mother to Maggie May. She's a little Wheaten Terrier, and I live just outside of Hanging Rock State Park in North Carolina.
So we were talking before we started recording about how Sarah and I are secretly stalking Molly McGinn on Facebook.
In a nice, friendly way.
In a nice, friendly way. Your life has taken so many different turns, so twists and turns. But you have this lovely, lovely way of always finding these ways to celebrate who you are. And it's like, you're always so positive. I just want you to share your magic about how do you embrace life's changes?
Yeah, well, so as far as social media, I mean, I love storytelling. I'm really a writer, I think, at heart. And my first job, real job, like with a regular paycheck and a 401k, was as a journalist for the newspaper. And telling stories is always something that I've loved to do, and doing it for a newspaper and kind of doing it for print. And this was before social media started. So then along comes MySpace and then blog publishing. And all of a sudden, what was just limited to paper or print was now immediate, and you could do it with great frequency and a lot of reach and in a digital way. So what I started learning how to do was that I learned that the more I published, the more I tried to say, the more I learned what I wanted to say. And then that was just with writing and photographs. So now all of a sudden, this newsroom that had been made up of reporters and photographers and copy editors and designers and all these people that took to put together a newspaper was now in the palm of my hands, this huge storytelling machine. And that allowed me to kind of start to tell stories with my phone. And I just love storytelling and social media really for that reason. And but I don't feel like I have necessarily followed a quote unquote traditional path. I mean, my passion was not necessarily to get married and have a family right away. I wanted to start a band and put out records. That was just what I wanted to do. And I think I'm doing it for myself because I'm doing it for myself because I want to be able to look back and sort of say, okay, yeah, I remember what I was doing when I did that, and that's how I got through it. And that's how I really write a lot of my songs too, is they're always generally precipitated by a very difficult time. I mean, because life is full of heartache and parents aging and friends leaving, and with that comes a lot of grief. But on the other side of grief is sort of this remarkable oasis of creativity. And so I feel like I often feel like I'm kind of toggling back and forth between the grief and the creativity that's on the other side. And so that's what the songs are, or the ideas or whatnot. And then music for me is really my family, the collaborations and, the musicians that I play with, that they become my family in a lot of ways. They're my brothers and my sisters, and then the songs are like my children, and I get a tremendous sense of belonging from that. But sometimes too, at times it can be really super lonely because they're things that are sort of that come and go. They're kind of fleeting, and so how do I create a sense of home and a sense of place for myself between those times? And then that's where sort of another phase of the work, that inner work, comes in. And especially now, especially coming into my late 40s and the life changes that are happening now, how do I make this a celebration, and how do I comfort myself, and how do I make it something beautiful? And because it's weird to see the changes in your body and the changes in your face, and then to redefine that has been something I did not know was coming. But I think it's becoming a new focus for me for sure.
So when I've seen you on stage multiple times, different places, and when I see you on stage, I see all this joy radiating from you. How do you stay positive? How do you do that?
Well, so seeing me on stage is sort of the curated version, right? Like it's the good light Instagram perfect crop filtered version. It's not the Be Real version, but that really is, I don't know, that's just the only place that I feel normal. I mean, I feel like I really do. And I know we all can do this, but I do feel like an outsider pretty much everywhere else. But when I'm on stage, I just feel like that's where I belong. Now, that doesn't mean I do deal with a lot of like insecurity about the songs and like different sort of self-esteem issues about, why would anybody want to pay attention to this and why? And so honestly, well, not honestly, but to be very direct, me being on stage is literally me punching my fear in the throat. Like it's literally me saying, no, you don't get to win this battle today. Like I'm going to do it anyway. And, there's been times when I have let myself like get a little shut down by it, and it's not fulfilling. So for me, it's a constant seeking. Like, how do I do it for myself? And then also, how do I pull other people in and make them try something or make us all like just, be awkward. Like, let's just get awkward together.
It used to be with musicianship. People did it for hobbies. People did it with families. We sat on the front porch. We played music. And then in today's modern time, I feel like there's such pressure to monetize that creativity. And it's kind of like, I like what you just said about pulling people, like pulling them on stage, or not on stage necessarily, but pulling them into that creative space, because it's so important for all of us. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I felt pulled in by Laurel and Dossett. Laurel and Dossett kind of hooked me by, put me under her wing and helped me get experience in a lot of different places like Triad Stage. And then when she went on and did her series at Lucky 32, she was very intentional about holding that space for other female musicians. And that really stuck with me. And she's also another person too who really believes that a musician's role is a membership to the community. When someone dies and someone asks you to come and sing, you do that. That's what you do. She definitely taught me that music is a comfort. And then also the time I spent working at Kinder Music, working for the publishing company, I really learned that kind of similar to what you were saying, that Sarah, that it's something that is that belongs to all of us, and it belongs in the home, and it belongs in the bonding between a parent and a child, and then with families. And so that's it was that, and going on to doing the series that I did at Joymongers for a while, specifically holding space for female identifying and LGBTQ artists, because even as a woman, I felt very fortunate. I never felt shut out because I was a woman, but I always knew that I was in a very male-dominated environment. And even when I started Amelia's Mechanics, I wasn't intentionally looking to start an all-female band. Those were just two of my favorite people. We all just happened to meet together at the same time. But I do think we have a responsibility to go out and make sure all the underrepresented voices are heard, number one. And two, everybody needs that little shove sometimes. Like, come on, girl, you can do it. Like, and so when anybody would come up to me at Joymongers and would say, hey, I'm a singer, and I'd say, great, when do you want to come up and do when do you want to do it? And so I know that I was able to give some people their first show, and that's such a good feeling to me, because and I don't know why. Maybe it's me giving back, but also it just makes for such a richer, creative community, because Greensboro was known as a cover band town for the longest time. And then now I would say there's a ton of musicians that are focused on original music, and it's become a very different kind of a music town. So, and it's just not going to happen if we don't help each other and reach out and start making things.
So how do you set your priorities? How do you maintain that kind of newness mindset?
A lot of it had to do with me moving out here, like moving out up to Big Creek and being surrounded by these beautiful trees and kind of just being in nature. And so self-care has always been a priority for me. It's not that it's always been a priority, but it continues to show me that it needs to be the priority. So I do start, so self-care is always first for me. And with self-care, and that means like exercise and eating right and getting a good amount of sleep. And then what am I putting in my mind? And how am I being a good daughter? My parents are getting older, and trying to understand what my role is as a daughter to them. And then my role as a sister to my brother and an aunt, who is that person? And then what kind of a friend. But I think music is always such a very clear priority for me. I think I had been feeling stuck for a really long time in my creativity, and also just in my abilities, just my music abilities. So that became a priority for me this year. It's 30 minutes taking, doing finger exercises, learning the fretboard, trying to make 30 minutes in the morning to do some songwriting. And then at the end of the day, between 8 and 9, sitting down and doing it again, just because I know I am not going to be a happy woman if I get to the end of my life at 90 years old and didn't invest in myself in that way. Because that's always been a dream. Plus it's really helped me get stuck help me get unstuck. And then the other priority for me is just pursuing creative ideas. And a lot of it is it's a cure for loneliness. So when I have a song idea or an idea for a project, and Jeff Tweedy says this in his book, How to Write One Song, like when you get an idea, you have a constant friend, and this constant friend that you're sharing with, and you're ideate. Like I'm sure you guys, like when you first realized you had this idea to do the podcast, and it's like suddenly you're communicating with this thing and shaping it, and you're never alone. And then you have each other and you're building it. So for me, it's like making, what am I doing to give myself that friend? And sometimes that means rest. Sometimes that means just giving myself a break. But then more often it means like, what am I doing to court that idea, and like checking out what's going on at SECA, like at the Southeastern Contemporary Center for Art, like what kind of workshops are going on there? What can I learn that will sort of feed an idea or like a project? And how do I've got the long-term projects and then the immediate projects, but for me, it's just always been music. And so it's been easy for me. And I know that's not as clear for everybody. So I feel really fortunate. And also, for me, music is not really the way that I want to make a living, but it's how I want to live. It's how I want to live every day. So that just keeps it really clear.
Just hearing you talk, I realize that we probably have something else in common, in that we're both single. So I was listening to a podcast the other day. Imagine that, about singleness, and there's a lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s and who are never been married and single, and they talked about the dealing with that, what that's like, and how people constantly ask, like, why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? And it's kind of get away from the whole deficit model, like marriage is a choice and this is a choice. And do you find that you are people asking those questions, and how do you kind of make sense of that for yourself as you're finding your own way?
It's such a great question. And it's really one of my favorite questions, because that happens so often at dinner parties. That's one of the first things people talk about. Okay, are you married? What do you do? And I've learned not to ask those questions first, because I hate those questions. But I do, and I was at a friend's house last night, and I'm surrounded by couples, and and I'm not going to sit here and say that doesn't strike a really lonely chord with me sometimes, because it really does, when I'm like getting back in the car and kind of going home and like resetting. It's like, okay, well, am I making the right choices? Is this the right choice? But I have to remind myself that that's just a lot of cultural programming that started without my choice. I had no say in the matter in terms of kind of, as a woman, what was going to happen to me for the rest of my life. So I'm really at this particular time also just coming off of the heels of a really heartbreaking relationship. I mean, they're all heartbreaking, but this one will change me forever, because, and I'm so grateful for the pain, because it made me realize I never want to love someone so much that I lose myself ever again. And so this next part is, I really think, going to be about putting myself, and regarding that relationship to myself in a very different way. And I don't feel in any way that I'm running for it. If anything, I feel like I'm really running to myself in a way that I haven't before. And I'm just, really building a very rich life. But it's a conversation a lot of women don't have. And I love that you asked it, because I'm still figuring it out.
You used the word celebration earlier, which I love, about getting older, because I feel like we live in a youth-obsessed culture, and everything about getting older is like, oh, you need this cream, or you need to lose your belly, or you need to whatever. And I love the fact that you're talking about celebrating that. We are all very lucky to be growing older, because a lot of people don't get that gift. But it does affect the way we create things. And as a musician, how do you feel that getting older, redefining yourself, the celebration of aging, how has that affected your songwriting?
Ooh, great question. I don't know. So like the first picture that came to mind when you were talking about that was like Elizabeth Cotton. And most of the pictures that we see of her, she's in her like 70s and 80s. And I'm thinking about Alice Gerrard, who is coming up on 90, and Bonnie Raitt and Lucinda Williams, who I saw perform while, still recovering from a stroke last summer. And more seeing my heroes being exactly who they are and being totally fearless about it. And, as far as aging, and this was interesting because I was talking to my therapist about this the other day, and I was really struggling with a lot of self-esteem stuff. And she said she wanted me to picture a place where I just felt very safe and very loved. And I remembered, and I immediately went to this place where I have a mentor of mine. This mentor of mine, she was in her mid-80s. Her name was Shirley Kinney. And she lived in like an assisted living home. And I would go see her every Sunday and sit on her couch and just melt and feel so much love and unconditional acceptance and joy. And she always had little chocolates in a jar by the couch. And I was, tears were just pouring out of my eyes when I was remembering her. And in that moment, I thought, oh my God, like, what a wonderful thing it is to be able to get to that age and give that to someone else. So as far as like how that will effect in songwriting, I think I'm pretty hell-bent right now in trying to find ways to write songs that are not super saturated. Well, I've always been this way. I really hate love songs. I think we need new narratives. We need new reasons to celebrate and to dance that have nothing to do with romantic love. And so trying to write from that perspective, like how to, and Lizzo did totally nailed this in 2020, 2021 with her records. Like they were, and so did Lauryn Hill. Like they were, and a lot of actually the hip hop artists in the 90s were writing about women's empowerment in a way that I was not paying attention to because I was so busy listening to like Grateful Dead and Fish and whatever. But so I think for me, I'm feeling really inspired by those artists in the way that they really reached out and like lifted other women up and were trying to tell them, this is what's going on in life and it's hard, but it's beautiful, and be about it, be all about it. And that's sort of where I'm trying to go now. And I don't really always know why I get drawn to certain ideas until like much later, but I usually find like I'll write a song and then like a little bit later I'll be able to see, what I was going through at that time. Like it'll sort of show up. But the other thing too is it's really important for me to be my age and to be on stage and to let other women see it, like other women my age to see it and to see themselves. I write a lot about social media and mental illness really sets in for people when they can't see themselves in the world. If they can't see themselves in the world, that's when people can start to have mental health issues. So I want to make sure, and I don't always see versions of myself out there. So it's like, I think that's why it's so important to just be like, so, audaciously authentic, because like, you never know who needs to see that, you never know what woman out there is struggling with her own kind of stuff. And just, if she sees me up there wearing an Adidas tracksuit and looking like a fool, maybe she'll let go a little bit more too. Like that would be, and so I hope I'm doing that. But my heroes are all much older than me. I don't see them slowing down, and thank God for them, because they inspire me so much.
That's beautiful. And I love what you said about seeing people, seeing yourself,
Right.
is super important in media, and we don't always see ourselves. But I just love that, that you are helping by just being there and doing your thing.
So I'm so appreciative of you being here today, but I was hoping that you can leave us with some inspiration that helping people embrace change. I mean, we call ourselves the free rangers, the Gen X kids who grew up but don't want to do things differently. But we've seen so much, we've gone through so much, but we're still going through some stuff. And now it's like our bodies are changing. This is weird. How can you inspire us to go through change in a positive way?
Well, so this is something that a friend of mine who's also a therapist, it was an exercise that she told myself, she shared with me a long time ago, and I was going through a really hard time. And she said, okay, Molly, I want you to imagine yourself as a 90-year-old woman sitting on a porch somewhere. And the woman that you are today, I want you to walk up to that porch, and I want you to sit down across from her, and I want you to ask her what you should do. And I never got to asking the question, because once I imagined myself walking up to that porch and sitting across from that woman, the first thing that she said to me was, thank you for giving me such an adventurous, rich, and wonderful life. And I think in my mind, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to set that Molly up to have a head full of memories and experiences and stories and wisdom and joy to share. I want her to take care of her body. I want her to feel as good as she possibly can. And so when I think about changes, it's like, okay, is this going to set her up? Like, am I going to make that 90-year-old Molly happy? Like, will this help her in the long run? And so, that's kind of how that's like a guiding kind of imagery thing for me.
Wow. I needed to hear that.
That was beautiful.
That was lovely. Thank you, Molly. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me, ladies.
So, Sarah,
yes,
as a musician,
yes,
what was your take of Molly?
I love Molly. I mean, but the first time I don't know if I said this in the conversation or not, but the first time I saw Molly McGinn was in Bloody Blackbeard at Triad Stage. And I was just so impressed with her vocally, and all the work that she's done with Laura Lynn. I've seen her in all sorts of community performances. She's just a very talented songwriter and musician, and she's such an inspiration. But I didn't know that she was a writer for a newspaper.
Yeah.
That was very interesting to me, although that makes perfect sense that she's a songwriter.
Yeah. So that imagery of that walking up to that woman, that 90-year-old version of yourself, that really rang true with me. I really needed that because I since I'm a single mom, I tend to I need to take care of myself for my kid. I need to take care of myself to make sure that I can be here. But I also need to think about that future Amy. I'm also looking out for her too. That I needed to hear that today.
That was beautiful, and I think it's something that we don't think about, especially as women. We tend to be nurturers, and we take care of our kids, or we take care of our parents, but we always forget to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we have rich lives as well. We want to provide that for our families, but we also want to make sure that we have a rich inner life.
Right.
So that we have something to remember fondly
when
we get older.
Yeah. I think she just, when we were getting ready to talk to her, we talked about how she just seems to weather the storm so beautifully. And she was just like, well, I'm faking you out. Well,
that's what we all do. Fake it till we make it.
Yeah. But it's just, she just always seemed so joyful, but she didn't even realize that she came across that way. But if you've ever heard her perform, and luckily we're going to play some of her music here on the show, she just comes across just such a joyful being that you don't want to you want to keep hearing her. You just want to keep talking to her.
Oh, definitely. I think one of the other things she said that really stood out for me was, making sure that her on stage, part of the reason she wants to do that is so that other people see women on stage,
right,
and women growing older on stage, because we want to see ourselves in the media,
right,
and in our communities. And so having that as inspiration for someone else, saying, hey, I could do that.
Right.
That's hugely important. And we don't know the ripples that we're creating,
right,
to people, and what change we're
important,
invoking.
Yeah, definitely.
I think one of the things also to take away from Molly is that a lot of times we as artists get very self-conscious about our art, and we don't really know if we're good enough, if we can get up on stage and share what we have to say, if it's something that's relevant. And her saying that your creativity is good enough, and that it's inspiration enough, and who you are is enough. I think that's huge.
Yes.
And we all need to hear that we are good enough to express our art.
Yes. I think I needed to hear Molly today. It was important.
I think Molly's awesome.
Yes.
So if you want to find out more about Molly McGinn, make sure to check out our show notes, and we will have links to her music and website. Thanks for listening.
A one. If ever you're down and I'm not around, I want you to remember the worst is just December, and you'll find a friend under every rock and tree. In each epiphany, may every single song pull you right along and around the bend. you're sad, check your feet, nothing shifting underneath. You're fine. I know you said it to me once, but can you tell me one more time? You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Once I didn't know your name, but I loved you just the same. If you have a question or you need a blessing, meet me at the fence. I'll be the road and rise to me, the wind beneath your feet. Like Francis of Assisi, you won't need to miss me and don't need to pretend. If you're sad, check your feet, nothing shifting underneath, you're fine. I know you said it to me once, but can you tell me one more time? You're fine, you're fine. You're fine. Solo. If you're sad, check your feet, nothing shifting underneath, you're fine. I know you said it to me once, but can you tell me one more time? You're fine, you're fine. You're fine.
Thank you for joining us for Free Range Flock. Our goal is to inspire and celebrate who we are, the Generation X kids who grew up and decided to do things their way, with grace, humor, and joy. This has been a production of Sassy Am. If you want to learn more about our podcast, follow our blog, share your positive insights about being a free ranger, or to suggest topics or guests for future episodes, please visit our website at sassyam.com. That's SASSAYAM.com. Keep pushing.